For this first episode, I want to go into my story and what's been going on with my health over the last year. And I realized when I started recording that this is going to be really long, so I'm going to break it up into two parts. I'm Natalie, the Ardent Autist, and I am fat, sick, and fed up. Certain aspects of this story will require that I go into greater detail, so I will be doing that later on. But for now, I'm just going to tell the story as sort of an overview and give you guys an idea of what I've been dealing with. On January 1st of last year, 2025, I woke up and couldn't hold my head up. Basically, I woke up, I had excruciating neck and head pain, so a very severe migraine, and what felt like a migraine in my neck, and my head was like this, and I had to do this basically to hold it up, and I ended up, first my boyfriend gave me actually a horse leg wrap to put around my neck, and then I ended up getting a soft cervical collar so that I could just sit and be not laying in bed and hold my head up without having to use my hand. Preceding this, I had been feeling like I was coming down with COVID just based on the symptoms, and I had it twice before. They were identical, so I figured it was probably COVID that was going around at the workplace, so it made sense. So I really thought when I woke up with my head like that and my neck hurting like crazy and with a migraine that it was probably related to COVID somehow. So I made an appointment with my doctor, and he did two things, aside from doing a very thorough physical exam and asking me questions, because he's a very good doctor. He ordered x-rays of my neck, and he referred me to a neurologist, or actually the neurologist I already had for my migraines, and the x-ray showed that I had some sort of ligament injury. The weird thing about that is that I hadn't injured my neck. I would have noticed that at work or at home. I hadn't done anything that tweaked my neck even. Like sometimes maybe you turn your neck a little fast when your muscles are tight and you get that kind of twinge like you pulled something. I didn't even have anything like that because I'm very careful with my neck. My neurologist refused to see me and referred me outside of the hospital network, and I never did figure out exactly why that was. Over the next 3 weeks, my neck did improve. Wearing the collar helped a lot, anti-inflammatories, and doing some neck yoga. If you haven't heard of neck yoga and you have neck problems, I highly recommend it. But even though it's improved, my neck is still not the same. It has not recovered fully to where it was before that happened, and it has been well over a year now. So at the time I was working an overnight shift, so I would go to sleep around between 10 and 11 a.m., and then I would get up at about 6:45 p.m. So on January 27th, which was a Monday, I went to sleep between 10 and 11. It was actually about 10:30, and then I woke up at 6:45, and when I went to sleep, aside from the kind of lingering neck pain and weakness, I felt normal. When I woke up at 6:45, I was definitely not feeling normal. The entire left side of my body was completely numb, and when I tried to sit up, I realized that the entire left side of my body was also very weak. It was almost completely paralyzed. I had to kind of use my arms, well, mostly my right arm, to move my left leg, and normally when I get up, I'll sit on the side of the bed for a minute and kind of stretch a little bit and just wake up before I stand up to start my day. Sitting up on the side of the bed was a challenge because the entire left side of my body felt like it was dragging me down, and I had to kind of fight against that. The numbness wasn't helping because I couldn't feel where everything was either, so I really thought that maybe the numbness was causing the weak feeling, but that didn't actually dissipate at all. When I stood up from the bed and started trying to walk, I almost tripped and fell, and I didn't figure out why initially, but when I started walking around getting ready for work and everything, I realized that my left foot was dragging on the floor. Two things crossed my mind. One, I've had chronic migraines for a very long time, since I was 7 years old, so I thought, I've never had one of these before, but maybe this is my very first hemiplegic migraine, because my migraines have been getting worse over the last few years, and that is one of the worst migraine symptoms that there is. The second thing that crossed my mind, which would cross the minds of most people, was stroke. So I started using my camera to record myself and kind of testing to see if I had any of the stroke symptoms using the FAST acronym, which is face, arm, speech, and time. Face, arm, speech, time. So when I did the selfie recording, I did a video and I also took a picture and looked in the mirror. I didn't have any face drooping. I did have arm weakness, but that was the entire left side of my body, not just my arm, although that isn't unheard of either. And for speech, when I was doing the video, I did some talking on the video and played it back to myself, because I've heard from people who have had strokes that when they were speaking, nobody could understand them, but they thought that they sounded normal. So I thought if I played a video to myself, I would probably notice if there was any discrepancy. So the only stroke symptom I had was the arm weakness, and that was the entire left side of my body. So I thought, okay, maybe this is a hemiplegic migraine. It should wear off. And I took my migraine medication. So I thought, I'm just going to try to go to work. Obviously, that was a stupid decision. I should have gone to the ER right away instead of putting it off. It doesn't matter that I've been blown off in the past. It wouldn't have mattered if I got blown off again. Getting it checked out immediately would have been better. Also, I had missed work in the beginning of January because of the dropped head syndrome thing, and I didn't want to miss more work. None of that justifies my decision not to go to the ER. So I went to work, and my job is pretty physical. It was overnight stalking, which is something that I loved doing, by the way. I love really active jobs normally. I hate sitting at a desk or anything that's sedentary and on the phone. Ugh, I'd rather be on my feet doing things. So I went to work, and it became very clear very quickly that I couldn't do the very basic duties of my job. Normally, for instance, I walk between 2 and 3 miles per hour, and when I woke up on January 27th, I had gone down to under 1 mile per hour. That combined with the weakness on the entire left side of my body, my foot dragging the floor, and some other neurological symptoms made it completely impossible for me to do my job anywhere near the level that I used to. Along with the weakness and my foot dragging the floor, I was also feeling dizzy. I was getting vertigo every time that I would squat down or bend over and then stand up. And I was feeling extremely fatigued. I mean, just the fatigue. More than anything, the fatigue was really getting to me. The more I did, even though I wasn't able to do much that night, the more I was just feeling like I was about to fall over into a coma. So I did everything that I could while pacing myself and being very careful until lunchtime. And at lunchtime, I couldn't even eat. All I did was sit in my car wanting to fall asleep, and I talked to my boyfriend about what was going on, and he told me that I needed to go to the ER, which obviously I knew by then. But did I go to the ER then? No, I wanted to try and finish my shift. I reasoned that my shift hours had been cut by 1 hour that day, so instead of working the full 9 hours, I was going to be working only 8, and I thought after that I could go to the ER because it's right down the street. Did I mention that I'm really stubborn? Because I am extremely stubborn. After lunch, when I walked back into the building, my boss came over to me, my immediate supervisor, and she had a little talk with me about what was going on. She asked me what had happened, if I had been in an accident or something, and I told her no, I went to sleep normal, and I woke up like this, and I should have gone to the ER, and she said, yeah, you should have. She said, you're not performing anywhere near normal, and it's very concerning. She was very worried about me. And she was talking to me like that because she actually cares, not just because she was my boss. I already knew, obviously, that I was not able to perform my job like I should be able to, and that something serious was going on, because it was definitely not a migraine that was going to wear off, at least that I could tell. So I told her that I was going to go to the ER after work, and that I might have to file for short-term disability. So my boyfriend took me to the ER the next day, and it was the ER right down the street from my workplace, like I mentioned, and that did not go very well. I might have to do a video on that one. It is a doozy. But basically, they didn't do any real tests except for pricking my thumb for blood sugar. I have zero history of diabetes myself, or in either my mother's or father's side of the family, but they wanted to test my blood sugar anyway, and told me that they didn't have any way to do any other tests and that I needed to go to a neurologist. As I feared, the ER was a complete waste of time, and yes, they did bill me for that, and the doctor billed me separately for over $1,000. The following morning, we went to my primary care doctor's office, which was in the same building actually, and he got me in for an emergency appointment. When we told them what had happened at the ER, he was absolutely livid. He ordered some more tests that they should have been doing in the ER the night before, including an MRI, which I didn't get to do until Valentine's Day. He only ordered that one for the brain and without contrast. It was a couple of days later when his office contacted me saying that my neurologist was basically refusing to see me, and they referred me out to another clinic to see a different neurologist. Meanwhile, since my symptoms were remaining stable, I decided that I needed to just file for short-term disability with work. The brain MRI on Valentine's Day came back normal. I do have a few lesions, but nothing that would suggest multiple sclerosis or anything similar. 4 days later, I went to see the new neurologist so that we could figure out where to go next. He did not take my full history and did not do a complete neurological exam, but had decided because of the dropped head syndrome that I must have myasthenia gravis, so he decided to have me do some blood testing for that, and he scheduled me for an EMG for the following month. At this point, I was already feeling pretty jerked around, so I decided that I was just going to try and schedule with another neurologist for another opinion, who might actually listen to me and take my full history, because I felt like some of my history might be valid. So along with the EMG that was scheduled for the beginning of March, I also scheduled with another neurologist to see in April. I went in for the EMG on March 3rd, and it went really well. He seemed like he really had a lot of experience doing the EMGs, but there was one big problem. You know how when you go to the doctors or the hospital or any kind of medical facility where you're dealing with medical professionals, they always ask you your name and date of birth like 50,000 times? I learned that day why they do that. Of course, I already knew why they did that, but this doctor in particular decided that he didn't need to do that, and he did the entire EMG under the wrong patient name. So he went through the entire EMG with me without verifying which patient profile was up on the screen while he was doing it. And at the end, he just kind of looked at the screen, which I couldn't see at the time, by the way, and said, "Oh no, we have a problem." If you've never had an EMG done or seen it done on someone else, it entails two parts, but both of them involve using an electrical probe to shock you along your nerve path. The first part of the test entails using just the metal probe to shock you at various points along your nerve path, and the second part involves sticking you with a needle into your muscle and shocking you from within your muscle. The numbness made it a lot easier for me than I'm sure it is for most people, and I don't actually have a problem with needles, but there were two places that it was really, really painful. Inside the web of my thumb and the inside of my foot, those still had quite a lot of sensation, and when they stick you with the needle, they don't just shock you, they tell you to flex the muscle, so you're kind of flexing the muscle into the needle and then they're shocking you. So after he realized what he had done or done wrong, he told me to wait in the room and that he would be right back. So I waited, and I don't know how long it was. It was maybe 10 or 20 minutes, but he never came back. Then a nurse came in and asked me why I was still there, and I told her what happened. She told me to go and wait in the waiting room, and she would come and talk to me about it and figure out what was going on. Of course, by that point, I had already looked at the screen and saw that he had the wrong patient on the screen and that the test results were all tied with that patient name. So I went out to the waiting room and we waited, and the nurse didn't show up either. So instead of realizing that he made a mistake and fixing it, which probably would have involved doing the entire EMG again, he decided to run away and not get the test done for me. I never got the report, by the way, but I did get billed. The after visit summary said that my results were normal, but the actual notes from the doctor said something else. So I'm just going to read this part of it for you because I'm probably not going to say it correctly if I don't. Testing is abnormal. Left superficial perineal responses absent. Significance of this is unknown and possibly could relate to patient body habitus and technique. What that means, I guess, this is something that I found out later from other people, is that you can actually have this happen if you sit cross-legged a lot or if you had some kind of injury to your knee. I don't sit cross-legged and I didn't have any knee injuries. It also says in his notes that he discussed the results with me, which he absolutely did not do. So I spent the next month just trying to figure out where to go to next, doing a lot of research that was basically going nowhere, and waiting for the appointment with the other neurologist, which was also my boyfriend's neurologist. The time between when I made the appointment with this other neurologist and the actual appointment date was about 7 weeks. And in between that time, I actually spoke with their office and asked if they needed any medical release forms or anything filled out so that they could get my medical records. And I also told them that I would be bringing in all of my medical records, so they said that bringing them in should be fine. I signed a medical release and uploaded it onto the portal so that they would have that, and then I called them and let them know that I had done that and that they could download the document with my signature and everything, and so they could get my medical records before I went in for the appointment. Why am I mentioning this? Because of course they didn't. When I showed up for my appointment in April, they hadn't bothered to get any of my medical records and knew absolutely nothing about what was going on, which meant that it was basically a new patient appointment. I had all of my records like I had promised, but when I gave her the disc so that she could upload it and look at the MRI images, she was unable to read the disc. So basically, I had brought that for nothing, and they had wasted 7 weeks not getting my records. I wanted everything to be done very thoroughly, though, because at this point I was really fed up with the entire ping-ponging me around from one person to another and getting nowhere. So I let her actually look at all of my medical stuff on the app on my phone, where I had all of the reports and everything. The only thing that I couldn't do was give her the MRI on the disc. If you've never seen an MRI on a disc, you can actually see the images moving frame to frame, and you can move them back and forth and look at different views and stuff. So I couldn't do that on my phone. I didn't have that like video or anything, but I had the images. So I just let her look through everything. She also did not take an entire history, and she did a subpar neurological exam. And then she told me that because she didn't have my records, we were going to have to reschedule. I might have to do an entire episode on that appointment too. Just thinking about it makes me angry. So I scheduled an appointment for June, and I also decided that I was just going to go and see some other doctors, whoever I could schedule with before then, to try and get some of the testing done to just rule things out. So I also made an appointment with a rheumatologist. I forgot to mention the tests. So the tests did all come back in March, and everything was negative, basically. So he ran 2 tests for myasthenia gravis. He also ran ANA, CBC with differential, CK, metabolic panel, ESR, folate, thiamine, TSH reflex 2, T4, or free T4, excuse me, vitamin B12, and vitamin D. So I came back with normal vitamin D and B12. Let's see, the vitamin B1 I was actually high because I had started taking it every day. So I started only taking it every 3 days because I thought, yeah, I probably shouldn't have it high like that. And everything else was within normal ranges. So leaving the second neurologist appointment, I was absolutely fuming. I'm sure you can imagine why. But the girl at the front desk was really nice, so I didn't take it out on her. She did tell me that the medical release form that I had signed and uploaded to the portal was not in my file for some reason, so I filled out another one and we set up the appointment for June. When I contacted the rheumatologist's office, they didn't have anything until May, so I set that up also. Meanwhile, my short-term disability extension was denied. So I had the short-term disability from the beginning of February through the end of March. And when I went to renew it, because it had become clear that I was not going to get better anytime soon, they decided to deny it with the reason of something to do with a bladder infection I didn't have. I don't know what exactly they were going for there, but they didn't look at any of the evidence at all. They just tried to go off on some tangent with a urine test that had nothing to do with why I went on short-term disability in the first place. So I went to see the rheumatologist in May, and he is a fantastic doctor. Everyone loves him when they meet him. I had actually seen him once before in 2019 when I was having a different health issue, and they thought it might have an autoimmune component, but thankfully it didn't. He was confused as to why they hadn't done any kind of testing to see if there was a structural issue with my lower back or my hip, because hip and lower back injuries and pelvic injuries can cause the foot drop and all sorts of weird neurological issues with your leg. So he ordered an x-ray or x-rays, I should say, for those two things. And then he ordered a panel of some autoimmune stuff to look for, including C-reactive protein, another ANA, a different ANA screening, I guess. And he also put in the test for Sjogren's syndrome. My x-rays came back showing that I didn't have any broken bones or anything, thankfully, and all of my autoimmune tests came back normal. Then I was just waiting to see the neurologist again, and this time hoping that she would have my records so that I wouldn't be wasting months of my time for nothing. So for the second neurologist, in between the two appointments, because I was waiting for 2 months and everything, I decided that I was going to be proactive with getting the records, and I contacted the hospital where I had all of the tests in January and February and had them send over the records to this other hospital so that she could review those. And I found out that the medical record form that I had filled out, they had put the wrong hospital on the form, and they were requesting records from a place I had never been to. Also, after that first appointment, she had told me that I could take the disc to the actual hospital and have them upload the MRI to the hospital network so that she would be able to view it. And when I went to my appointment in June, they still had not managed to do that. She said they were backed up for about 3 months, and it had only been 2 months, so of course they couldn't get that done. She mentioned the possibility of 2 things that might have gone wrong to cause my symptoms. One of them being weight gain, which I found odd considering that I went to sleep normal and woke up like this. So I asked her how it was that I would have gained enough weight to cause that problem over the course of 8 hours. The other thing she mentioned was fibromyalgia. And that was when I mentioned that I had actually seen the rheumatologist and she knew him. I guess they had some sort of personal relationship. And as I mentioned, he's a really great doctor and everyone loves him when they meet him. So she had been around him at some point, I guess, and knew who he was. And she kind of changed her tune at that point. I told her that back in 2019, when I had seen him before, he had actually tested me for fibromyalgia and told me that I didn't have it. Of course, that's putting aside the fact that my symptoms don't fit fibromyalgia. She did 2 things that seemed like they might be semi-useful. She ordered another brain MRI, so basically a repeat to see if there were any changes, of course without contrast, because why would you do with and without contrast when you don't know what's going on with somebody with really severe neurological symptoms? And she also referred me to the Rush University Hospital. The MRI was scheduled for the end of June, and I was really livid leaving that appointment. So I decided that I was just going to try and get another opinion. while I was waiting for Rush University Hospital to call me and schedule an appointment. I went to a smaller clinic and saw a nurse practitioner who was the first person who actually sat and listened to my entire history. She seemed genuinely concerned. She did the blood draw right there in the office and had me do a urine sample right there in the office too. And she referred me to neurology at another hospital and urology as well, because something that I haven't mentioned that went with my symptoms is that my entire pelvic area went numb and I was having some urinary issues. I was just relieved that somebody was finally, one, taking me seriously, and two, actually doing something useful instead of just pawning me off. The urologist was also really good, another nurse practitioner, and she actually listened to everything. They did a bladder ultrasound right there in the office, which I thought was really cool. And she told me, along with my other symptoms, that I had urinary retention, and she thought that I had a neurogenic bladder. She said that they actually have pelvic physical therapy, and that anytime that I want to go, because I was already in physical therapy for all this other stuff going on, I could go through that, and then when I had enough time and energy, I could go to this pelvic one and she would refer me for that. Then in July, I saw neurologist number 3. This neurologist number 3 now, he was actually really good. I liked him a lot. He listened to me. We didn't go over my entire history, but I just basically gave him the bullet points so that we wouldn't waste too much time. I told him what kind of testing we had already been doing and my symptoms. He did a full neurological exam, and he actually ordered an MRI with and without contrast of brain, cervical spine, and thoracic spine. So I felt like that was a lot more useful than the previous 2. He also ordered some more blood tests. So I'm not going to pronounce this right unless I read it. Autoimmune encephalopathy paraneoplastic evaluation, the MRIs, immunofixation electrophoresis, Lyme total antibody, myelin oligodendrocyte glycoprotein FACS, NMO FACS, and protein electrophoresis. I scheduled a follow-up appointment with him, and then he ended up going into internal medicine, so I had to switch to another neurologist with the same hospital network. Something I did forget to mention also about neurologist number 2, she did 3 useful things. The third one is kind of a smaller thing, but she did recommend that I try to get into the Mayo Clinic. I got the appointment scheduled at the Rush University Hospital for the end of October, and meanwhile I was trying to get a hold of the Mayo Clinic. I did an online application and questionnaire thing, and they called me back and did like a kind of interview over the phone, and then I got a notification saying that I was rejected. But I was told by some people who have been to the Mayo Clinic before that that is really normal, especially with neurology, and that I should just go into the ER there, which became my last resort basically, because I think it's a 5.5-hour drive. So then it was just kind of a waiting game, waiting for the follow-up appointment with the one hospital and waiting for the appointment with the Rush University Hospital. In the interim, I did see my primary to extend my leave of absence from work, because even though I was denied for the short-term disability, I was on a leave of absence, and I didn't want that to lapse because I was still really hopeful that this condition would at least improve enough for me to work, if not completely resolve. And that is probably a good stopping point for part 1. I just wanted to do an overview. Like I said, there are a lot more details that I can get into in later videos if you guys are interested, but that basically covers from the end of January through to September. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in part 2.